As a coach, when you think about all the opportunities that you have to coach and teach your players, what would you say is the absolute best time for raw coaching? Although most coaches think of it as practice time, my belief is that the post-game meeting is the absolute best time for you to do what you do best, coach. Post-game meetings are essential to a team's success. They allow the coach to discuss different behaviors and plays that happened in the game while it's still fresh in their players' minds. The one thing about a post-game meeting is that the game is still very raw for everyone, both players and coaches, and emotions are probably running high. If you aren't strategic about how you handle the post-game meeting, the constructive message behind your words has the potential to not be received. In today's Bullpen Bulletin, I'm giving you my 5 easy steps to conduct a proper post-game meeting, so you can make sure that you take full advantage of this golden opportunity for raw coaching. Hey team, I'm Coach Hart, this is Building Better Baseball, and this is the best place for baseball education. If you're new to the channel and we've never met, I want to say welcome to the team. If we've met before, then welcome back. This channel is specifically for youth baseball players and coaches to help you improve your game. I come out with weekly videos to help you in all areas of baseball. And plus, at the end of every video, I always have a PDF downloadable guide for you so you can take your game even further after this video is done. So don't miss that at the end. But now, let's make sure that we know how to conduct a proper post-game meeting. The first tip is to make sure that you write down everything that you want to talk about in the post-game meeting, both positive and negative. One of the best things that you can do to take full advantage of the post-game meeting is to have either a mini notepad or a piece of paper and a pen in your pocket for the duration of the game. Whenever something happens that you want to discuss in the post-game meeting, make sure you write it down as soon as it happens or as soon as you think of it. This will accomplish 2 things. 1, it allows you to remember everything you want to talk about while also keeping focus on the game. You don't have to worry about remembering everything. Just make sure when it happens, you write it down so you don't forget and then move on to the game. 2, writing things down will help your post-game meeting run smoother. If you're up there and you're trying to rack your brain and trying to think about all of the things you want to talk about, that will only lose interest from your players and it will drag on the meeting. If you have stuff written down, you know exactly what you want to talk about, you go down the list, you coach them on the topics, you answer the questions, and then when you're done, you end the meeting. And throughout the game, make sure you write down the positive things that happen as well as the negative things. Tip number 2 is to open the floor for your players before you talk. When the game ends and you're preparing for the post-game meeting with your team, the first thing that you should say when you go out to the huddle is, okay, floor is open, does anybody have anything they want to say? Sometimes you won't get anything and you'll get crickets, but other times you might have your whole team raise their hand. Both situations are completely fine. Opening up the floor for your players to speak first does 3 things. 1, it fosters a family atmosphere and makes your players feel that their opinion matters and you value what they have to say. They feel involved and they feel like part of a team. And much to a coach's surprise, many players actually have a lot of great insight and a lot of great comments to say about the games. You don't want your players to feel like you're talking at them. And if they don't have an opportunity to share their thoughts, then that's exactly what's happening. 2, as you go through the season, the post-game meetings can be really great feedback on your coaching. In the beginning of the season, you might not have your players saying much of anything about the games, which is fine. But as the season progresses and the same situations arise, your players should start to point out those same situations during open floor in the post-game meetings. Each time they bring up a situation that you have written down, tell them. Say, hey, great job pointing out that blank happened today. I actually have that written down. And then you just elaborate a little bit and you coach on it. I remember one post-game meeting, the entire meeting was covered during open floor because all of my players pointed out everything that I had written down. That was really cool to see, and it showed me that my players were actually listening to what I have to say, and they were learning from me. And 3, going back to the family atmosphere and fostering a healthy team environment, opening the floor allows your players to compliment each other. For example, a player raises his hand and says, it was really awesome how Joey did that sacrifice bunt to move Tommy over to third. That was the reason that Tommy was able to score on the next play. Great job, Joey. It's always nice for coaches to give praise and compliments to their players, but compliments coming from teammates can mean so much more for your players. If players are complimenting each other, everyone will feel welcomed and part of a team. And that's really the backbone of youth baseball, learning how to be part of a team. The third tip is to focus on extra outs and not errors. It is a guarantee, especially in youth baseball, that you will always have something written down that has to do with errors. With this reality, many youth players don't respond well to constructive criticism because they don't fully understand the concept that you're trying to help them. When they're the ones who make the error and then they hear the word error in the post-game meeting, they immediately shut down and they don't hear the coaching piece. The word error is a trigger for them, meaning that they did something bad and they let the team down, and that doesn't feel good for anybody. The one thing that I've found that really works well for my team is instead of calling them errors, we focus on extra outs. This puts a lighter spin on the topic of errors and mistakes, and my players are much more receptive to the coaching behind it. The idea behind extra outs is that when an error is committed, the other team now has 4 total outs for that inning instead of 3. We gave them an out for free, or we gave them an extra out. Now, instead of a player thinking that he took something from our team, he thinks of it as he gave something to the other team. In his mind, this is taking the focus off of him doing something bad and putting the focus on the other team receiving something good. I really hope that makes sense. Try this with your team and see how they respond to it. It almost becomes a game in itself where your team tries to give the other team the least number of extra outs as possible during the game. Tip number 4 is don't single any one player out in front of the team publicly. Make sure that you are very careful about addressing negative topics in front of your team as a group. It's best to speak in general terms. You want to be vague and not name any names. If you speak in general terms, like when we're not hustling after the ball in the outfield and we're not backing each other up, that's when the other team gets to score those extra runs, and we can't have that. We always have to be hustling after the ball. The players who were playing in the outfield who weren't hustling after the ball and weren't backing each other up will 100% know that you're talking about them. That's getting your point across without embarrassing anybody. If you said, Joey, you really didn't hustle after that ball in the outfield and Tommy didn't back you up, and that's really the only reason that those guys were able to score on that play, you really might as well point your finger in their faces and say it's your fault. That won't be received well by anybody. That will only cause those players to resent you and the rest of your team to resent those players. And that's not a family atmosphere. You can avoid all of that by speaking in general terms. If you really have to reprimand a player, pull them aside after the meeting and talk to them privately, not in front of the team. Tip number 5 is to always end with something positive. You always want to end on a positive note when you end the meeting, so this way your players aren't completely in the dumps until you see them next. Even if it was a horrible game and the entire post-game meeting was all about the mistakes and the extra outs that were made, you have to try to find something good to end on. The post-game meeting will break them down and bring their mood down, so you want to bring it back up before you go. You don't want them to stay down in the dumps until the next game or practice. We have to remember that it's youth baseball. They should be having fun. Normally, at the end of the meeting, I review the next event that I'm going to see them, and I call on a player to break down the huddle. This is a great way to end the meeting. Be sure to choose something to say to break down every post-game meeting. I've done my team's name on 3 and family on 3, and both of them work great. Choose something that works for your team. Before you go, I put this entire video into a PDF downloadable guide for you that's down in the description. It's free, and you can take it with you to help you in your next post-game meeting. This free guide, How to Conduct a Post-Game Meeting, lays out these exact 5 points that we went over in this video. I made it for you, it's free, and I'd like you to have it. Be sure to grab it before you go. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope this video helped you understand why I believe the post-game meeting is the best opportunity to coach your players and to teach them about this game of baseball, and how you can take full advantage of this golden time for coaching. I'll see you next week for another edition of the Bullpen Bulletin.